Now let's take all of the places where we're getting all of the list items and looking for a specific one, and we'll turn this into actually two hooks. One that allows us to get all of the list items, and then another that reuses that same hook and finds a specific list item by a book ID. So I'm going to copy this and we'll go to our list items. We'll make a function here called useListItems, and we'll paste that code in here. Looks like we're going to need to import useQuery from React Query, and we'll also need the client from the API client that we've got in this directory here. And it looks like we'll need to accept the user as an argument here, and that will allow us to get all of the list items. But then for getting a list item by its book, we're going to make another custom hook called useListItem. This is going to basically just call useListItems, and it'll need to pass the user. So a useListItem will also need to accept the user, and then it'll also need to accept a book ID, which we'll use right here. So this is the ID of the book that we want to get the list item for. And so from useListItems, we should actually get the list items, and then we can find the book for that particular list item. And we'll just simply return this value. And then we can make things a little bit more convenient for people in this useListItems by returning the list items. And if there are no list items or it hasn't finished loading yet, then we'll return an empty array. That way we don't need to do this Elvis operator anymore, and we can just search on an empty array. Great, so let's export useListItem and useListItems. We'll save that and come back to our book row where we got it. So at the end of the day, all I want to be able to do is get a list item from useListItem and pass in the user so I can make this authenticated request and the book ID for the book that I want to get a list item for. And so I no longer need the client or useQuery here. What I need is useListItem from utilsListItems. Let's try that out. And this is a book row, so we can go to Discover. And here it's working just fine. And if I go to a book that I have in my list, I am indeed getting the list item right there. So things are working great. What I did here is I took some code that was inside my book row and I copy pasted it over to the list items, and I turned it into two hooks. One for getting all of the list items for the user, and another for getting a specific list item by its book ID, which gives me a really nice API to use in my components. Incidentally, I can also use this in my list item list. So let's do that. We've got that same query where we're getting all of the list items. So let's swap this out for useListItems from utilsListItems. And then we can get all of our list items from useListItems, and all we need to pass is the user to make that authenticated request. So we save this, and we go to our finished books, and there we are, and our reading list, there we are. So being able to compose custom hooks out of the hooks that we get from React Query is really powerful because it means we don't run the risk of providing a different query key or a different query function for the data in question. It also means that we can hide away some implementation details for the specific data. And on top of that, it also means that we can alter the API to make it more convenient for our specific use cases.